Welcome to Indoor Voices, everyone. I'm your host, Fiona Queen, and with me today is Inna Faliks, a concert pianist and distinguished alumna from the Music Institute of Chicago. How are you, Inna?
I'm good. It's so wonderful to see you and to be here.
Lovely to see you too. And you're in California, head of the piano department at UCLA, professor of piano. What does it feel like being July and looking at the fall and the upcoming semester, and how are you weathering things with coronavirus right now?
Well, you know, I'm generally an optimistic person and I try to find the silver lining in everything. So I think, of course, on one hand, the spring semester, for example, it was heartbreaking to have a lot of fantastic graduating seniors and graduate students who really were looking forward to their recitals and who've had to, forego the chance to do it in the hall with their families and friends in the audience, etc. But at the same time, I feel like it gave us a lot of room to improvise and to be creative and to be really entrepreneurial, to learn various technological innovations
Oh,
and steps that
yes.
we can take, like such as this. So I think that on one hand, it was disappointing. On the other hand, a lot of really cool things happened. Um, and looking forward to the fall, well, we're working very hard on trying to see if one-on-one teaching in a safe way can happen,
Hmm.
whether it's between rooms. So we have disc claviers, Yamaha disc claviers that can connect this way, and that's very, very useful. And also quite inspiring, or whether they will put a partition in my room between the two pianos and wear masks, but we're trying hard to make lessons happen. We know that chorus, opera, orchestra, big classes, we know these things are not going to happen in person, but lessons hopefully will take place in some shape or form. So I'm looking forward to seeing my students in person.
Yeah, sounds like a very familiar conversation as we all kind of brainstorm and gather and look at the numbers and the facts. And again, as you say, the technology, anything that comes up that allows us, step by step from September through the winter into the spring. It's been very, yeah, I'd use the word. It's been traumatic not to be around Nichols Concert Hall, such a beautiful space. I feel like I'm in a bit of this satellite bubble right now.
Yeah.
But the pianos are going to be tuned on Friday, and we're just looking forward to being back in the space in whatever way we can be there.
Yes.
So, what kind of projects are you working on right now? That, as you mentioned.
Well, there are a lot of things happening for me, I guess, in my head more than anywhere else right now because that's all we have. But of course, the recordings are the best way I think to keep one occupied and creative. But of course, that's tricky too. Our recording studio just opened and very cautiously with a million details and precautions that have to be taken. But I'm looking forward to realizing some projects that had to be put on hold because of the coronavirus. So some of them are reimagine Beethoven and Ravel. And these are Beethoven bagatelles, Opus 126, and six bagatelles written by wonderful composers from UCLA, such as Richard Danielpour, Ian
Yes.
Krauss, David Lefkowitz, Mark Carlson, Tamir Hendelman, and Peter Golub. So it's six of these pieces in response to late Beethoven, kind of to celebrate Beethoven at 250.
Yeah.
And also on the same disc are three pieces by Billy Childs, Paola Prestini, and Timo Andres in response to Gaspard de la Nuit of Ravel, which I have recorded before, but I wouldn't mind doing it again. So this disc is a response genre disc with these new works kind of answering to the standards of the piano literature. And they're fantastic pieces. I can't wait to record them. One of them, the Billy Childs piece, actually Billy Childs and Timo Andres, those two pieces were supposed to get a Los Angeles premiere on the Jacaranda series on March 14th, and we were the last concert
Oh,
standing.
wow.
So it was canceled the morning of.
Oh,
Everything else had been canceled, and we were still
in the
on, and
wing,
they were going to
right
do an
there.
article. Yeah, but then it was, of course, much better, much safer to postpone it to next season, like most of these engagements that
Hmm. Of
I
course.
had for spring and summer. So that's one of the projects. Another one is called the Schumanns, and I'm very excited about that. I really got into Clara Schumann's music this year. It was her 200th birthday, and it got sort of
A little
overlooked,
overshadowed,
a
yeah.
little overshadowed by the big beat. But there's so many wonderful Bs other than Beethoven. You know, I just played an Amy Beach nocturne on my Corona Friday series, which was to die for. Gorgeous.
Fantastic. Yes.
But anyway, so I had all my students learn almost the complete piano works of Clara Schumann, and that was our end of the year marathon piano concert. We do that every year on a theme. So this year's theme was Clara. And so we did it via Zoom, and it was very moving, actually. People tuned in from all over the place, from all over the world, and so to do that was quite amazing. So I'm recording her G minor piano sonata, which I learned over quarantine, so it's a new piece for me. And I'm pairing that with Robert Schumann's symphonic etudes and the posthumous variations.
Oh,
those have been recorded already. I finished that recording, but the Clara Schumann recording is happening in these next few weeks. So I'm really excited to get back to the recording studio and to, make some music. So I'd love to play for you the first movement of that.
Please, let's take a listen. That was really gorgeous. And I'm so looking forward to, as we all are, to having you back in the recording studio and hearing much more of this beautiful music. You have such a beautiful way of rounding out your program, not just with the music itself, but again, there's always this narrative, it seems. There's poetry, there's autobiographical material, there are collaborations with composers, that have written, pieces that you're very much into the contemporary music also. It's an ongoing story. And you were at the concert hall at the Music Institute of Chicago last season in February, during your acclaimed program, Polonaise Fantasy, Story of a Pianist. Let us know a little bit about that and how it came about.
Sure, that was an incredibly meaningful performance. I'm so grateful that that took place where it did at Nichols Hall, of course, and I could not get through it without tears. Back then, I remember it was very, very profoundly moving and memorable. So this is a piece. It's really like a monologue, a one-woman show in a way. And in this monologue, I tell my story of immigration with my parents, of coming to Chicago. A large part of the story revolves around Mr. D, Mr. Emilio del Rosario, and the Music Institute of Chicago, and how he made me, into a young artist, into a performing artist. So the first part is about growing up in Odessa as a young composer, a young performer, young pianist in my childhood. Then the second part is assimilation after immigrating to this country. And that's not easy, and Mr. D is a central character in this. And then finally, the second half of the show is a love story. So it's like the romantic comedy. After everyone is done crying after the first half, which ends very sadly, the second half is how I reunited with my childhood sweetheart, my best friend from Odessa, who's now my husband. And we have 2 kids together, and he's a great guy. But the story of how we got together is kind of fun and unique. So I think it's a good way to close that.
And you do have a recording of that. Am I correct? That
That's
we're
right.
not in the place of being able to do live music necessarily right now. But if somebody wanted to, where would they be able to go to have a listen?
So this was recorded on the Delos label, and it's called Polonaise Fantasy: The Story of a Pianist. I have an actress reading the monologue part on the recording, and she's a wonderful actress from Los Angeles named Rebecca Mozo. And yes, I've been doing it myself live because I at some point felt like I need to tell my own story, but she does an incredibly beautiful job on the recording, and she sounds just like me, I think, when she speaks. But a few performances of this were canceled, of course. In fact, the very last performance I did of the show was for Worcester Music up in Boston. It was on March 11th. So I flew there on March 10th. I performed on March 11th, and March 11th, midnight, they had to cancel the rest of their season. So that was my last thing, was Polonaise Fantasy: The Story of a Pianist. And so I very much hope to continue performing it. Maybe I'll do it online at some point. Who knows?
You should. That'd be wonderful. And I was just going to suggest, is there any possibility that it'll expand, given that this story unfolding right now is another chapter and everything? So
absolutely.
Yeah, looking forward to it. I'm quite sure. I think if I read, when this sort of came about, you were in New York, and you're the founder and curator of your award-winning poetry music series, Music and Words. Was there a correlation between the two? Did one set off the other?
Absolutely. And also there's a third part to that again ties in Chicago and my Chicago roots. Music Words came about because I decided I wanted to do something different and bring together 2 elements and 2 audiences, music and poetry. And, being in New York, you can go and hear a poetry reading almost any night of the week, right, and with fantastic poets, but the audience will be people who go to poetry readings. Or you can hear a million concerts and people are diehard classical music, new music, what you name it, fans. So I just wanted to blend those 2. Because I grew up in a way where, there isn't one without the other. So, the arts are the arts. They are kind of, they feed each other. And we really, as artists, need to be aware of that circle.
The whole dimension.
It's so inspiring. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
So I started doing this. I decided, okay, I'm just going to put together programs where I feel like the poems and the pieces kind of narrate a complete whole, and it's very emotionally driven. You know, there's an arch, but it's not necessarily literal. So I started doing these series in various venues. I did this at LPR, Poisson Rouge, at a Cornelia Street Cafe, which now closed. So sadly, that was a great poetry venue and music venue in New York. Um, we did this in many different places, and it became kind of a thing, which was very cool. I did it at the Music Institute, but back then I remember that was one of the very few shows that I did with music words where it wasn't about living poets, because usually I would have living poets recite their works, but this celebrated my Beethoven CD, and so we had, oh my gosh, who was it who read? But it was a reading of Goethe and Schiller between Beethoven,
Yes.
and it was at the Music Institute, so that was fun. And maybe that's a good segue to bring in that Beethoven fantasy that I have for you. One of my
Beautiful.
favorite pieces to play, because we are in Beethoven 250, and no denying it. It's
We're
a big.
always in Beethoven, but if
That's
we're at
true.
250,
He doesn't need to be 250 for us to
that's
think
right.
about his music, but
Always
yeah.
one. Let's take a listen. Thank you. Again, just gorgeous. And I'm so glad that we're able to share, you know, in this time, not only the live music you're doing with us right now, but you do this wonderful series, similarly to what we're doing right now, but it's on Facebook, isn't it? That you do Corona
Corona Fridays,
Fridays.
that's right. Yeah, so I've been doing that. I also bring in an element of poetry to that. So maybe I'll go back and answer the question, which I think I failed to answer before I played the Beethoven Fantasy. But so when I did the music words, after that I was asked to appear in Chicago with Leslie Nichols, the actress who plays the cook on Downton Abbey, who plays
Yes.
Padmore. So we did this show called Admission One Shilling about Dame Myra Hess. And of course, Chicago was a big city for
Right.
Myra Hess. And that was an incredible experience. And so, you know, I played the part of the pianist, the piano repertoire of Myra Hess, and Leslie was reciting this monologue. So that gave me an idea, how cool is this, you know, to blend not only words and music, but also theater, a theatrical element. So that's how Polonaise Fantasy, the story of a pianist, came about in a way. It was maybe a little more organic than this. It took more time, you know, but I definitely think that played a part in it. That was an inspiration and kind of a next step. So now that we're all at home, you know, I thought, okay, I've been in LA for 8 years now. I still do music words, but not as systematically as I was doing it in New York because, you know, so many other things are happening. UCLA, a lot of my own performances, solo chamber music and charity, whatnot. So perhaps the series element isn't as present, but the project of music words keeps going. So in Corona Fridays, I decided I will always bring in that element, whether it's a poem that I read or a couple poems, or I play a piece of music that has words in it somehow. So the series is on Fridays at 7 on my Facebook page, and it's been fun. I've done
I love
15.
that you have the either the toilet paper on the piano. Uh,
Oh, that's right. Yeah. I
or,
didn't put it on now.
or the
That
paper
crisis is a
towel,
little
you know,
better now.
very, very symbolic of where we are. And it's just bringing to mind, there's another very recent alumna of the Music Institute, Natalie Vargas Nedvesky, that I'm going to give a shout out to right now because she is doing a series online called Literary Music Series and writing poetry and looking at this. And
Oh,
I
wonderful. I'd
must,
like to meet her.
going to figure a way. Yes, we must. Yeah, it's a kindred spirit in the wing there. So,
That
um,
sounds
but
wonderful.
I
Hi,
love,
Natalie.
we were just talking a little bit before about how for young people right now, you know, the element of staying positive is there, you're obviously giving them so much inspiration with what you're doing. And it's not easy to do something every Friday, you know, creatively in your home with, you know, with music all the time.
Yeah.
But you're managing that. What an example you're setting for them. And what other advice would you give to young people in the arts right now?
Well, I think that stay off social media a little bit more. Having talked about my series on Facebook,
Except for that.
well, I just feel like, you know, when you get sucked into that vortex of what everyone is doing, what, you know, all the news, all of that terribly disappointing stuff that's happening, you know, in our country in so many ways. I think a very healthy way is to be able to kind of find a place for where you can just withdraw into yourself, find your, you know, reconnect with your own voice, just practice, use the time to learn repertoire if you can. And don't worry, I don't think music is going anywhere. I've been hearing these shouts, classical music is dying, not just classical music, all music. It's just, it's dying, it's dead. No one's going to play any concert. Concerts will come back.
Yep,
You know, it's just a year. And
exactly.
yes, I feel, you know, it's also, I feel a little bit, you know, bad saying this because for me, I'm very lucky to have a position at UCLA. There are plenty of fantastic artists who don't have that and who lost everything in terms of just how to make a living. But I think that just to hang on and it'll be back and it'll be back stronger than ever with more creativity. And frankly, I think in times like this, people create their strongest work.
I was just going to hint at that also. As I've been talking, you know, this is the sixth episode of this series now. And I'm amazed, not amazed or surprised, but it, you know, that there is this aspect of you know, I'm home and I'm discovering this new repertoire and I'm working on these things. And so again, for young people, keep honing your craft. And I would even say, you know, look at some other aspects of art, poetry, painting, you know, and if you're online for anything, go to some of these, you know, beautiful museums around the world that have made their collections possible, and just, you know, keep that creativity absolutely alive.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
but also in a way, and this is something one of my students, shout out to Mindy Cheng, she said to me that somehow this past quarter made her feel like she's more connected to her peers because we would have a studio class in this Zoom format, so we would see everyone's face, you know, so people couldn't kind of sit there with their phone in the hall. And anyway, you know, they're all there,
Busted.
and we would make sure the video is on, but somehow that this connection between people is still there, and to cherish that. And also, I don't know, to be with your family, to connect to your family, to connect to people next to you, because a chance like that will not happen again, we hope.
That's really a very important message. And again, there have been these wonderful messages in this, but, you know, to all the Music Institute students and, you know, students in general and people who are missing concerts, yes, you know, find these ways to connect and enjoy these moments, because we're going to come back under, and it's just going to be a rush out of the gates, I think, when it's finally possible to be able to do that. So I'm looking forward to the art that emerges as a result of this, you know, the books, the stories, but also the look back, you know, maybe a decade from now, where people said, my goodness, you know, that was such an unusual and difficult time, but if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have had that special time with my family. I would have been elsewhere. So.
Exactly. I mean, and we should think of, you know, just someone like Shostakovich, and would his music be what it is had he not been, you know, living in the time that he was living in.
Absolutely correct.
Yeah.
And wonderful that for our series, walking into the 90th anniversary of the Music Institute of Chicago, we still have you hopeful to be able to present something next May, but that would be
I'm so
one of the
excited.
Shostakovich concerti. So
I am really thrilled about this, and it's so meaningful to me to keep this connection alive. And, you know, my family, I consider the Music Institute to be part of my family, really.
And as a matter closer than
everything.
you think, with your, you know, your mom, Irene, being a member of the piano faculty all these years,
Yes,
it is
for
so
so long.
sewn together. Yes.
Yes,
So
exactly.
to her also. Thank you so much for being here today, and I look forward to seeing your next Corona Friday performance.
Thank you.
And your recordings, of course. Keep us all posted on all of the beautiful creative work that you're doing.
Thank you
Thank you
so
so
much.
much.
Thanks, Fiona.